submit your questions at the bottom right-hand chat at any time. With that, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Larry Liu to begin today's discussion. The floor is yours. Sorry, Larry. I can't see your PowerPoint presentation. And once you're ready, feel free to unmute. Thank you.
Sure. Can you see now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So thank you, Cynthia, for the introduction. So I just would like to give a brief overview about what is Falun Gong, what leads up to the persecution, on Falun Gong practitioners' response to the persecution, and also the significance of this April 25th, 1999 appeal. Just first, very brief introduction. What is Falun Gong? So Falun Gong is a spiritual meditation practice rooted in the Buddhist tradition, and it has 5 sets of slow, gentle, flowing movement, qigong exercises. There are 4 standing exercises, and 1 sitting meditation. And also, the moral principle is usually based on the central tenets of Falun Gong. It's truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. And practitioners try to live up to these principles in their daily lives. So the persecution of Falun Gong started in July 1999, and that was because the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, felt that Falun Gong's popularity, because at that time Falun Gong outnumbered the Communist Party membership, and they felt that the popularity of Falun Gong and also its independence from the CCP state control is a threat to their power. So they started this persecution in July 1999. And over the past quarter century, millions of Falun Gong practitioners have been detained or imprisoned, and hundreds of thousands tortured widespread, and over 5,000 documented death cases from torture. But because of the risk and difficulty of sending information outside China, so the true number, the true death toll could be many times higher than this. And also, according to China Tribunal in London's estimate, hundreds of thousands of victims of forced organ harvesting, majority of them were Falun Gong practitioners. So just a brief timeline about Falun Gong in China. So it was first introduced to the public in 1992. And then the first 2 years, Mr. Li Hongzhi, the founder of Falun Gong, gave many public lectures, often at government facilities at the government's invite. And then in the early, until the mid 1990s, Falun Gong has been very popular in China. And also its main textbook became the bestseller in China in 1996. At that time, there are many government support and positive media report too. And then starting from that point up until 1999, you almost see like 2 parallel forces and competing forces and narratives inside the Chinese government. On one hand, many open-minded Chinese leaders, they consider Falun Gong as something very positive because of its moral teaching, help to stabilize Chinese society, and also its health benefit usually reduce the Medicare costs for the government, huge numbers. And so, but also there are some hardliners and some detractors. These hardliners, they consider Falun Gong's popularity, it's something, competing with the CCP for the hearts and minds of Chinese people, and some of them even consider suppressing Falun Gong as a way to consolidate their political power. And so starting from 1996, then there are some criticism in state-run media. You also see very positive report, but also some criticism, calling Falun Gong like a feudal superstition, something like that. And then there are some harassment to various practicing sites. And the first arrest of Falun Gong began in April 1999. I'll talk that a little bit later. And then the full persecution started in July 1999. So up until today, tens of millions of Falun Gong practitioners still practice in China underground, but also in over 100 other countries around the world, and practitioners of Falun Gong continue to advocate for their basic human rights and expose the lies and tyranny of the CCP. And so these are just some pictures in the early years when Falun Gong's founder, Mr. Li, was invited to give lectures in government facilities. And so it's hard to imagine today that back in 1995, the first Falun Gong seminar outside China was held in Chinese embassy in Paris at the Chinese ambassador, then Chinese ambassador's invite. And so at the time, also, there are many state-run media and the letter of support, reported very positively about Falun Gong, calling, Falun Gong's founder as the most acclaimed Qigong master in China at the time. So, for example, in 1993, and this is a commandment letter from the Ministry of Public Security, actually, its publication is called Public Security Daily, and they said that we commend Mr. Li, the founder of Falun Gong, for his contribution in safeguarding social order and security and in promoting the rectitude in the society. And in 1998, Shanghai TV, which is a state-run TV, did a special episode on Falun Gong about Falun Gong practicing sites all over Shanghai. And in that report, they reported that over 100 million people in China practicing Falun Gong at the time. So these are some of the photos you can see at that time in China. Every morning, every grassland, every public square, you're going to see hundreds of, sometimes thousands of Falun Gong practitioners practice. And that was previous one was in Beijing. This one is in Guangzhou, and this one is in Chengdu. So what leads up to the persecution? And I said earlier, there are some hardliners inside the CCP, and they started some harassment and also started some criticism in some state-run media. So on April 11, 1999, a Tianjin College magazine published a slanderous article with lots of falsehood about Falun Gong. And so Falun Gong practitioners in Tianjin went to that magazine, that college, and to tell them that their own true story and how wrong the article is. And so initially, the editors were very receptive, and they said, okay, we're going to correct the article, and we don't really know the truth, and now you told me, so we're going to correct the article. But almost a day later, they almost just like had an order from above, and they said that they had a 180-degree change. They said, we're not going to correct anything. And so more practitioners gathered there and tried to appeal to them. And then the police came. And so the police arrested 45 practitioners and beaten many others. And then Falun Gong practitioners in Tianjin appealed to the city government. And then the police there told them that to solve your problem, you have to go to Beijing. This is from the above, from the top. So you have to go to Beijing to appeal. So the word spread very fast all over the country. And remember, my mother at that time was in Jiangsu Province. That was like 5 hours in Tianjin. And she even learned that the next day at her morning exercise site, and she learned the news about this. And she was planning to go to Beijing at that time. So on April 25th, 1999, more than 10,000 Falun Gong practitioners gathered at the Central Appeal Office, and which is under the State Council in Chinese government. But that appeal office is just next door from the central government compound, Zhongnanhai. So many media actually mistakenly reported that the Falun Gong gatherers circled the Zhongnanhai. Actually, their purpose was really the appeal office. But the police led them to circle the whole Zhongnanhai, the central government compound. That was not their initial intention at all. And so during the day, the premier Zhu Rongji, the second person, actually number 2 person in China at that time, came out, and also 5 representatives from Falun Gong practitioners and came in, and they talked for some time. And then the premier said that we're not going to suppress Qigong. All the Qigong, you should feel free to practice your Qigong exercises. And then Zhu Rongji ordered the Tianjin government to release the 45 Falun Gong practitioners detained there. And so this is peacefully resolved. And the same day in the evening, and the whole group dispersed, and all Falun Gong practitioners left. And they even cleaned, some of the leftovers, some of the cigarette stubs thrown out by the police. And so everything was clean, orderly, peaceful. But after that, the Chinese state-run media mischaracterized this whole gathering, very peaceful. There's no banner, there's no slogan, very quiet. and they mischaracterize it as besiege the central government compound. And many media actually basically reported this as a reason of the persecution. But actually, it's not accurate to say this is the reason of the persecution. And you may call it a catalyst. But as I explained earlier, the hardliners inside of CCP already thinking about this persecution and framing Falun Gong from a few years ago. And so investigative journalist Ethan Gutman, he published a lengthy feature article in National Review in 2009. The title is Currents on the Fuyou Street. And so he explained, his conclusion is this whole thing is a bait and switch by the CCP to frame Falun Gong, to create the pretext to start a persecution. So the legacy of this April 25th, 1999 appeal, and this was the largest peaceful grassroots appeal to the Chinese government after the Tiananmen massacre, which happened 10 years ago in 1989. And so after the persecution started, many Falun Gong practitioners first went to Tiananmen Square to appeal to government, but later on they transitioned to massive public education to counter CCP's lies, propaganda, and expose their rights abuses. And so in Chinese history, throughout Chinese history, whenever there is a conflict between the government and the people, and there were usually just two outcomes, either violent rebellion or passive submission. But Falun Gong took neither approach. Instead, they started this largest civil disobedience movement in modern Chinese history, one of the largest in the world too. And so this April 25th appeal is the beginning and also this epitome of this historical moment. So after the persecution started and Falun Gong practitioners inside and outside China started many efforts to utilize to expose their propaganda and also the rights abuses. Practitioners inside China, the first row, the yellow tiles are what practitioners in China have been doing. For example, they talk to the police and persuade them, tell them the truth, persuade them not to participate in the persecution. And they hang banners outside, and they started underground print shops and printing DVDs, pamphlets, booklets, and distribute them, during the night. And also they work with human rights lawyers and to seek their legal rights. And during the pandemic, at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, Falun Gong practitioners, especially those in Wuhan, they shot video. And for example, Fang Bing, he shot many videos in hospitals in Wuhan at that time and uploaded to the internet. Many international media reported, and people learn about what this real situation in Wuhan because of his video. But many international media don't know actually he's a Falun Gong practitioner at that time. And he was sentenced to 3 years in prison because of that. And practitioners outside China also started many activism efforts. And the bottom yellow tile are just what they did in outside China. For example, they started petition, international advocacy. We're going to hear some personal story on that, and also make phone calls into China. And millions of phone calls have been made, not only just to the average Chinese to let them know about the truth and provide them uncensored information, but also call those police government officials to persuade them and let them know the truth, but also persuade them not to participate in the persecution. And also appeal at the Chinese embassy and consulate, and also internet circumvention tools. Computer scientists who practice Falun Gong in the United States, they developed software like UltraSurf, Frigate, and send them to the people in China, and many millions of Chinese people can access free information using these tools. And another central theme and piece of material that distributed in these efforts are 9 commentaries on the Communist Party. And this was a book published in 2004. And that was really the first book that documenting the history, the origin, and of the Communist Party and all their lies, the tyrannies, and their tactics. And really the first book to do that. And inspired by this by this 9 commentary book, practitioner started this 推党 movement, and it means quit the party in Chinese, 推党. And so this is not really a political movement per se, but it's rather a spiritual awakening movement, and to encourage Chinese people to take moral stance against the CCP's lies and tyrannies. And so it's completely voluntary, and many people use ideas to avoid retaliation from CCP. But what really matters is in people's heart. And so up to date, over 400 million of Chinese people have withdrawn from the CCP or its affiliated organizations. So the whole implication of this movement, Falun Gong has survived not only in China, but also they started this largest civil disobedience movement or information freedom movement in modern Chinese history. But the impact is really beyond the Falun Gong issue and Falun Gong community, because they expose the full history of CCP's crimes and really changing minds and hearts, awakening millions and millions of Chinese people, and also encourage many Chinese people to resist the CCP's violence and propaganda. And also these circumvention tools really help many people in China, but also in Middle East, people in Iran, and even people in Vietnam, and because there's a Farsi version, for Iran, and for people in other countries to access free information. And the whistleblower Falun Gong practitioners like Fang Bin, who are whistleblower of COVID-19 pandemic, really helped the whole world know this true situation in China at that time. So sociologist Andrew Junker published a book in 2019 titled Becoming Activist in Global China. And so in that book, he compared Falun Gong practitioners' activism with the pro-democracy movement, you can call it Mingyun. And his conclusion is Falun Gong's mobilization and activism is much more effective and influential. And because of Falun Gong's decentralized organizational structure and also the emphasis on individual initiative. So I would like to conclude this presentation from Mark Palmer, and former U.S. ambassador to Hungary, and also the co-founder of National Endowment of Democracy. And Falun Gong, and he said, quote, "Falun Gong is, in my judgment, the single greatest spiritual movement in Asia today, and there is nothing that begins to compare with it in courage and importance." Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Larry. You managed to cover over 26 years, nearly 30 years, I believe, within 15 minutes. That's an incredible feat. Thank you for your presentation. Like you said, tomorrow will mark 26 years since that historic April appeal in Beijing, which kind of laid the groundwork for peaceful dissent for the Falun Gong community. And before we go to our amazing speakers, I do want to mention a quick anecdote. You mentioned the circumvention tools that, has developed within the past 26 years to skirt censorship. I recently talked to a Senate congressional staffer, and he said that in 2008, when he visited Beijing, the very first person that he met at the airport was a Falun Gong practitioner who handed him a VPN, like USB card. And I was really impressed to see how the butterfly effects of these, how far they go and how powerful they are, because that one person in Beijing might not have believed that he was making that big of a difference, but he was changing the lives and the information access for people in Beijing and even this senator staffer. So it's just, blows my mind to see how small the world is and how powerful these acts of advocacy is. Let's move on first to Jenny. I'm kind of curious, Jenny, because I understand you worked as an electrical engineer in China, and you simultaneously ran a print shop by yourself in your free time from 1999 all the way until 2023. And during that time, you handed out over hundreds of thousands of flyers and VPN cards and different materials. Can you walk us through the process of your activism, what got you into it, and how it differed after COVID?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Jenny from Jiangsu Province. I'm very appreciated. I can hear speaking. Yeah, followed I will speak Chinese. 我第一次做那个真相资料啊，是从1999年11月开始的。那个时候呢，那个在国内啊，就是法轮功被破坏的相当严重，就是到处都是共产党的那个谎言宣传。那么我作为一名法轮功修炼者就想，就说我能做点啥，因为人都被欺骗了，我就想就是有某种方式去告诉人家真相，法轮功不是像电视上讲的那样。所以我就在网上搜索，后来我找到了明慧网，发现一篇那个稿子就是非常好，对讲真相非常有帮助。那篇稿的题目叫《善良的人们请来了解法轮功真相》。然后呢，我就和我先生一起打印了很多，大概几百份甚至将近1000份的那个资料，然后就把这些资料呢，我们用收集到的名片啊、报纸上的广告啊，各种方式收到的那个地址，把这些真相资料挨个放到信封里，寄到全国各地，让更多的人去了解真相。
I'll stop and translate real quick. I started in November 1999. The Chinese Communist Party at that time had already started the persecution of Falun Gong, and many people around me and around the country were being lied to about Falun Gong, and I didn't want this to continue further. And so I, along with my husband, went online to find ways that we could help, and we ended up finding this website called Minghui, and there were pamphlets and templates for flyers. One of the flyers said, had a title of "Kind People, Please Come and Learn What the Truth About Falun Gong Is." And we printed hundreds of these flyers in our home, and we ended up looking through newspapers and looking through other materials to find addresses, and we mailed these across the country to different Chinese people, and that was how we got started.
但是呢，可能因为那个发的信太多了吧，就是信封是同样的信封，那么就一次就发很多很多，那么引起了当局就是公安的注意。后来我们呢，就是我和我先生还有另外几个朋友呢就被抓了。我呢经过就是询问了24小时以后呢，就放回去了。但是我先生呢，他们就说他是组织者，就是一直被关押了10个月。
So soon after that, we might have printed and mailed too many of the same format, and so of mail, and so the Chinese public security authorities in my local area were able to trace it back to us, and me and my husband, and with a few other friends of ours, were actually detained. Even though I was released after 24 hours of interrogation, my husband was falsely called the leader and was detained for 10 months in prison unjustly. Yeah, go ahead.
虽然我先生被抓捕了，但是我坚信呢，法轮功是好的，法轮功没有错，真善人也没有错，所以呢，我就继续做资料。那么从网上能够得到的信息，做了很多的资料，比如说后来的那个讲天安门自焚真相的140例的那个谎言啊，还有就是一些的那个小册子，比如说天赐鸿福啊，明白啊，什么就是很多很多的各种能够得到的资料做出来，然后呢就去散发。通常呢我们就是说到街上去放在人家那个自行车的车筐里挨个放，然后呢或者是跑到小区里边，走到人家的那个一个单元里边，走到顶楼，然后挨个就是说往下走，一家一户全部放，今天这个小区明天那个小区， 尽量多覆盖这些小区，就去发资料。
Even after we were detained and my husband was still in detention, I kind of felt even more determined because I knew that Falun Gong and its principles, truthfulness, compassion, forbearance, are good and true. There's nothing wrong with those values. So I continued printing flyers every week, and there were a variety of different flyers and pamphlets about how, the Chinese Communist Party's lies, about different historical events, and also about the truth behind Falun Gong, including our values. And I would go either to bike baskets and put them in the baskets in the neighborhood, or I would go to apartments and start at the top floor of the apartment and put flyers at every door and just go down every single floor. So I printed hundreds of flyers. And I also gave them to people on the street.
后来呢，我又学会了那个做 DVD， 那么做的比较多的呢，就是那个当初的那个晨运演出的光盘，那个就做了很多的打印出来，那个把封面打好，做好包装，就去发给人家。然后还有后来还做了一些真相币，就是在往1块、5块、10块这种小面额的上面打印一些信息，就说比如说是晨念法轮大法好，真善人好，或者三推保平啊这样的，还有做一些那个VPN 的卡，就是说能够上网，就是翻墙的，告诉他们怎么翻墙的。还有一些像小卡片，就是我们叫做护身符的这种这些资料都做。那么尤其是那个神韵那个光盘啊，给人看，人家都赞美，都说好。
I also learned how to burn DVDs later on, and I would burn different videos on it. One of the most common ones that I made was of Xinyun Performing Arts, a recording of a Xinyun show, because you can't watch it in China. And I've also found VPN cards online with instructions to jump the Great Firewall, so I started printing those out too. And I also made Lucky Charms, like good luck coins, where you would have $1, $5, and $10, and we would basically like stamp or print on them with information like quitting the CCP or Falun Dafa is good, and those were very popular along with the DVDs.
像这些年来，我就一直就是从99年第一次开始，一直坚持了大概到2023年吧，大概是这一直在做。但是呢，后来就是疫情嘛，3年呢，就是我们那边也封控了，虽然没有上海那么严重，但是呢，也是大概3个月左右的时间，基本上是不能出去的。然后就说，当时每一家只能有1个人出去。然后就说，而且是在指定的，比如说2个小时之内可以出去，其他时间不能出去，所以发资料呢就非常困难了。像而且是到处是监控啊、摄像头啊，那个，然后我就改变策略，做一些小的那些卡片，比如像 VPN 卡啊，或者是这种，后来又做什么 U 盘啊这种的，就比较小、不引人注目的这种，继续发。
So I persisted in printing and producing these flyers and different materials, handing them out from 1999 to about 2023. But obviously COVID happened in the middle. And so during COVID, my area went into lockdown. It wasn't as strict as Shanghai, but for about 3 months, we couldn't go out. Only one person per household could leave with a limit of about 2 hours maximum. And since there were more cameras and more surveillance over time, over the lockdown, it became harder to share materials in person. So we adapted. I started giving out smaller items like the VPN cards, which were like half the size of a business card, and also the coins. People really liked them, and we ended up doing this more frequently because we were conscious of the surveillance.
这些年来就基本上都是，这就是我做过的那些真相方面的真相资料讲真相的那些事情。
And that is my experience producing flyers and materials over the past 20 plus years. Thank you so much, Jenny. We'll go to Diana now. Diana, similar to Jenny, you've balanced multiple hats for 13 years now, being an IT professional in North Carolina, with your activism in your free time. And I understand that you've called tens of thousands of people in China to raise awareness and expose the CCP's persecution, with over 5,000 people quitting the party during your calls. This is such a unique story that most people have never even heard about. So can you explain how you got started and your experience with us?
Yes, sure. So to give some context, I began practicing Falun Dafa in 2005 in the United States after the persecution began. Living in this country and being able to freely practice my beliefs and also speak out about the persecution and do what I'm doing today. I've now been making phone calls to China for over 13 years and made more than 50,000 calls, and I have convinced more than 5,000 Chinese to quit CCP. Compared to the other practitioners, it's not a big number. But I'm very proud to be part of the process and witness the changes happening to Chinese people. The phone calls I made are mainly through two channels: large projects with many volunteers from all over the world. Volunteers are organized to create a wave of non-stop phone calls over just a few days. This makes it harder for the Chinese government to trace and block our calls. These projects focus on specific groups during special time periods. Targeting groups could be government officials, policymakers, military, police force, doctors, lawyers, scholars, staff in the judiciary system, prison system, etc. Sometimes such projects took place upon urgent needs. For example, when a large-scale kidnappings of Falun Gong practitioners happened in certain area of China. Organ harvesting cases were reported in certain hospitals. Or the occurrence of specific sensitive events in China society. The phone number are usually collected by practitioners in mainland China or people who sympathize with Falun Gong. Some of these contact numbers were obtained from systems with security clearance, like VIP numbers. We also use a system to auto-generate phone numbers to call. Nowadays, WeChat, TikTok, all those social media platforms are good options for truth clarification. Besides participating in projects, I also make phone calls to ordinary Chinese people in the mainland regularly. Almost every morning before I start my full-time job, I spend 2 hours making phone call to China. The content of topics during a phone call, besides the exposure of the persecution and the evil nature of CCP, it could also be closely related to the current events in China that affect people's daily life, things that people are concerned about, like the economy, COVID-19, food safety, organ harvesting, targeting children of ordinary families, or the US-China tensions. These topics help open the conversation, and we connect them back to how the CCP is harming everyday people. Whenever there's a chance, I also, in the call, assist the Chinese people to bypass the firewall to access information from outside the wall, like introduce them like the software like a FreeGate, how to download them, provide the dynamic network address so they can access. Over time, we've seen that this kind of advocacy really works. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. It's so fascinating to see how, there's obviously a thirst for information freedom inside China, and the way that you're able to give them that connection and bridge that gap, even though you're obviously here on the East Coast, is incredible to hear. Now we'll switch to Lebing. I understand the past few years have been very difficult for you and your family. Your parents were suddenly and unjustly arrested for their faith in Shandong. And you actually told me your mom was on the phone with you when it happened, and her call dropped right after she told you she was handcuffed and treated roughly by the police. Can you briefly walk me through your family situation?
Sure, thank you. Firstly, thank you for having me, and thank you for the tremendous support of the Falun Dafa Information Center to free my parents from the ongoing persecution of Falun Gong. The persecution of Falun Gong has been almost 26 years, and my parents started to practice Falun Gong before the persecution. So since March 20th, 2024, my father, Mr. Ding Yuande, is still being illegally detained in the Shandong Province prison just because his faith in the Chinese ritual practice Falun Gong. He has been subjected to torture, brainwashing, forced labor, and has a great risk of forced organ harvesting from loving Falun Gong practitioners. And it's not only about my parents. On May 12, 2023, my parents and dozens of other Falun Gong practitioners from my hometown city, Yuzhou, in the province Shandong, have been arrested without any legal basis. My parents were arrested while they are working on the tea field. They are tea farmers. And a dozen of plainclothes policemen came to the tea field, arrested them illegally, and took them to our house, searched the house, and found Falun Dafa books and materials that clarify the true situation of the persecution of Falun Gong in China. And then they were disappeared for 2 weeks. Nobody knew what happened to them, and nobody knew where they were. I was extremely worried about the safety of my parents. And then I turned to the NGOs and for human rights to raise awareness of the persecution of Falun Gong. Actually, in the last 25 years, my mother was also several times arrested. The first time was shortly after the persecution of Falun Gong was started in China. She went for one constitutional petition to the Tiananmen Square, holding the banner that is saying Falun Dafa is good. And then she was illegally arrested for the first time in her life. After that, the police threatened my parents if my parents will continue to practice Falun Gong, and one of them will be arrested. I was not allowed to visit school, so they had no choice to flee our village. And as a result, I was living alone without my parents for 1 year. And then in April 2012, 13 years ago, my mother was arrested again as she was distributing flyers that clarify the true situation of the persecution of Falun Gong in China. And then she was brought to the one Chinese women labor camp, sentenced 18 months women labor camp without any trial, without any legal basis. And in the school, as school students, I can still remember that we were forced to sign the banners on which the materials, words were slandering Falun Gong with propaganda. And we were forced to watch TV materials in school. And in order to study in China, the party secretary of our village had to confirm that no family members in my family were practicing Falun Gong. And from the bachelor study to master study, the party secretary of bachelor study university had to confirm that I'm not Falun Gong practitioner. Otherwise, I will lose the opportunity to study. My parents became the victims of the mass arrest on May 12, 2023. It reflects a tip of iceberg of the ongoing state crime against all Falun Gong practitioners in China. And including my father, 2022, including my father, 22 Falun Gong practitioners only from my hometown city have been sentenced to different terms in prison and with fines. My father had been sentenced to 3 years with a fine 15,000 Chinese yuan, around 2,100 US dollar. And I'm very worried about the safety of my father.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know it must be incredibly difficult to see this happen, and the 2-year anniversary actually is coming up in a few weeks of your parents' arrest. So I think to be able to represent them and to represent the other 22 Falun Gong practitioners who are all, victims of that mass arrest is very important. And it's so horrifying to see how even education and different facets of society are being utilized in the persecution of Falun Gong. So thank you for your perspective on that. We'll turn back to you in a second, but Jenny, can you share briefly, past your advocacy, like your internal motivations? Do you think your advocacy was effective? And did you sense a change in society over time?
Yes，我分享几个我在讲真相这个当中遇到的一些事情，或者是叫小故事吧。就说，其实我之前提到的那个 VPN 卡，在国内是非常流行的，因为人们都想了解真相，人们在寻找真相。这个 VPN 就是帮助他们翻墙，可以了解一个真实的世界，尤其是什么共产党的真实历史啊，反正是法轮功的真相也好啊，就是人权问题也好啊，就人们想要知道这些，或者是疫情，中共掩盖的疫情的真相也好，都在了解真相。那么有一次我就是晚上出去发那个就是 VPN 的卡，就是往汽车上这个卡片嘛，正好被一个小伙子看见了，他就走过来问我你在干嘛呢？我就走过去告诉他这个是什么东西，这是一个 VPN 卡，可以帮助他了解真实的世界，可以看到在国内看不到的那个真实的那个情况嘛，真正的新闻，然后就给了他，他就表示非常感谢。
Yeah, so I'll share a few experiences that I had. I can see that people are definitely seeking the truth in China. The VPN cards that I mentioned in my previous question were very, very popular. And I think it's because people want to understand what really happened, especially during COVID or even pre-COVID, like how the CCP is lying to them, and they just want to know the truth. And one night when I was in a parking lot, I was passing out these little VPN cards and putting them on car windshields. And while I was doing this, a young man saw me and asked, "What are you doing?" So I walked up to him, gave him a card, and explained how to jump the Great Firewall, to which he said, "Thank you." So I think these cards are very useful for helping Chinese people learn the truth about history, about the world, and about human rights.
还有一个小故事是关于真相币的。有一天，就是我一个同事，就是把我叫到一边，神神秘秘跟我说：“我有一个好东西给你看。”然后他从皮夹子里边拿出一张那个5元的真相币， 上面就写的纪念法轮大法好，灾难来时命可保。然后他说他花了20元去把这个5块钱买回来的。我对他笑笑说，哎呀，你就好好保存，会给你带来好运的。
There's another experience I had where I was at work and a colleague pulled me aside. He doesn't know that I practice Falun Gong, and he was very mysterious. He said he told me he bought something really special, and he brought out one of these 5 yuan coins, one of the lucky charm coins that had on it, Falun Dafa is good, and he said it took him $20, 20 yuan to buy this 5 yuan coin. And it took him a lot of effort. And so I smiled and I didn't say much. I just said, keep it safe. It's very lucky. And I thought that was such a fascinating experience.
还有一件事情就是，我女儿是参加一个跆拳道的那个培训班，那个我呢就是给她教练，她母亲和他们全家就是神韵的光盘，还有一些真相的资料，他们看了和那个真相资料和光盘以后呢，都非常高兴，就全家都退出了党团队，并且呢，就是那个教练的母亲还说她也想学法轮功，真的，而且她说她每遇到不顺心的时候，情绪不好的时候，她就一直念法轮大法好，法轮大法好，然后情绪就稳定下来，事情也就顺了。
Another experience I had was my daughter started a martial arts class, and I gave the martial arts teacher and her family a Shenyun DVD and also some flyers that I created, and they were very happy to see it. And after reading and watching everything, their whole family quit the CCP. And later they told me, the mother told me that she wanted to learn Falun Gong too. And now when her mood is down or when she's facing some hard times, she told me she recites Falun Dafa is good.
还有就是我国内的一些朋友，虽然他们不练法轮功，但是呢，他们很理解，也就尊重我的。他说这是你们的信仰，我们很尊重，很理解你们的。然后呢，有一个我的朋友，他就是说和别人就是说聊天的时候吧，讲起了法轮功。其他人呢都在诋毁法轮功，照 CCP 的说辞在诋毁法轮功，他就站出来反对，他说你们说错了，你们法轮功不是这样的，你们不了解，电视上讲的是错的，都是谎言。后来我知道了以后呢，我也很吃惊，我也很高兴，他真的明白真相了，为这个生命感到高兴。
And the last experience that I had was one of my Chinese friends. Many of my Chinese friends don't practice Falun Gong, but they are very, very kind and very respectful. And one of my friends was having a conversation with other people when the topic of Falun Gong came up. And when other people began to demonize the faith and basically parrot CCP propaganda, my friend stood up and corrected them on Falun Gong beliefs and the rights abuses happening. And after the fact, when I heard this, I was shocked but really glad and happy to hear that my friend did that and stood up for my faith. And yeah, that was her last experience. I want to turn. Thank you so much, Jenny, for sharing those anecdotes. I want to turn back to Le Bing real quick about advocacy. Throughout the past 2 years, you've succeeded in getting the European Parliament to pass a resolution that featured the name of your father prominently. And last month, you spoke twice at the United Nations in Geneva. Can you speak more about your advocacy, what you're doing, and like the process of it?
Yeah, sure. The party secretary of the Rizhao City was also the party secretary of the military district. Now she is now the party secretary of Qingdao City, a neighborhood city. I was very worried about my parents, especially in the first 2 weeks, because they were just disappeared. And military hospitals and the military themselves are strongly involved and contributed to the forced organ harvesting from loving Falun Gong practitioners and prisoners' conscience. As I know, my parents were arrested. I was very clear that the only way to free my parents is the advocacy abroad, is the international pressure. So I turned actually firstly to the World Organization to investigate the persecution of Falun Gong. The NGO has organized very rapidly urgent phone calls to the local police stations and responsible authorities who were responsible for the arrest of the Falun Gong practitioners like my parents in my hometown city. And they are quite scared and they didn't expect that what they have done to practitioners in my hometown city have been exposed, have been known so quickly. And because of that, including the NGOs from Germany, like the International Society for Human Rights, headquartered in Frankfurt, has written protest letters to the former Foreign Minister Qin Gang and the Jiangsu Province authorities at the provincial level and to my hometown city, calling the Chinese government to release my parents immediately. As a result, my mother was then released 2 weeks after the arrest on May 12th, 2023. And but my father is then still being detained at that time until now. They want to silence me, or they want to continue the pressure, because Falun Dafa Information Center in Germany and the Falun Dafa Association in Germany has supported me to organize one urgent action like the one of Amnesty International. It's a protest letter that can everyone sign to the Chinese embassy in Germany and to the local authorities in my hometown city. After my mother was released, it's on June 14th, 2023, two policemen of the local police station came to our home and threatened my mother and said, basically, just because of your son, just because of the protest letters to our party secretary, we will imprison your husband. So you can recognize that they are not talking about law rules. They are talking about the persecution. It's about the persecution policy with the order, ruin the reputation of Falun Gong practitioners, break them financially, and destroy them physically. And I was really encouraged by remarkable efforts of European lawmakers from different European countries. Actually, in the last more than 2 decades, Falun Gong practitioners from different European countries are doing a long-term and very touching efforts and advocacy to approach the European lawmakers. Many European lawmakers, they have informed well about the persecution of Falun Gong practitioners. So with the support of the practitioners in European countries, I have got protest letters signed by the European lawmakers from different political groups from different European countries to the Chinese embassy, calling the Chinese government to immediate release and unconditionally release my father, Mr. Ding Yuande. And then I tried to approach the members of the European Parliament with the help of Falun Gong practitioners here. I do believe that it's the long-term, advocacy of Falun Gong practitioners that have touched the heart, especially the peaceful resistance of Falun Gong practitioners, have touched the heart of the European lawmakers. And finally, 5 different political groups of the European Parliament has co-sponsored the European Parliament's resolution on the persecution of Falun Gong, and they singled the persecution of my parents. You can see the very detailed documentation of the persecution of my parents. Basically, the European Parliament calls the CCP to immediately and unconditionally to free my father and all Falun Gong practitioners, to and the European Parliament calls on the European Union and its member states to take sanction measures against all the perpetrators and the entities who have been involved in the persecution of Falun Gong. So after that, the European Union and the German federal government has also followed the European Parliament's resolution and put the case on the human rights dialogue between EU and China, calling the CCP, urging the perpetrators to immediately release my father and another Falun Gong practitioner, Ms. Xu Na. So it has been the first time in the EU history that the European Parliament and the EU condemned severe human rights abuses on one Chinese farming family and taking remarkable rescue efforts to free my parents from the ongoing persecution. And another step is, as you mentioned, I was able to deliver an oral statement in the United Nations Human Rights Council on behalf of one German NGO, Society for Threatened Peoples, who has advisory status by the United Nations and the Council of Europe. I reported there in the last month about the new global strategy of the CCP against Falun Gong. I could report the intensified transnational repression against Falun Gong practitioners, and we called the United Nations Human Rights Council to appoint a special rapporteur on forced organ harvesting from Falun Gong practitioners and other persons of conscience. And the Chinese delegate of the Chinese Communist China interrupted me while I was delivering this oral statement and tried to silence me there. So I have been very grateful to the remarkable support of the Vice President of the United Nations Human Rights Council. He rejected the absurd requests of the Chinese delegate. So as a result, I was able to conclude my oral statement. But you can see from the process that the CCP has not refused any state crimes that the CCP committed against Falun Gong, and they try to whitewash the different kinds of state crimes, especially the state crime like forced organ harvesting and the very systematic eradication campaign against the Falun Gong practitioners. By they use different kinds of methods, but obviously they are trying to silence the human rights defenders. They are trying to abusing the United Nations Human Rights Council. So I want to seize the opportunity to thank all kinds of reports that especially contributed to free my parents. I hope that my father will be released also very soon.
Thank you so much for that. And obviously, it is, the United Nations and the European Parliament need to be applauded. I think these actions do matter, and supporting Falun Gong, supporting human rights defenders in China is something that needs courage, to be honest. You mentioned peaceful resistance. I actually want to mention that in a lot of conversations, most people, including lawmakers, don't know that in China, there's no law banning Falun Gong. And so, Jenny's advocacy, your advocacy, your father and your mother, their advocacy by handing out information and by meditating in their private homes, that's legal. That's all within legal boundaries. So this is extremely atrocious that the Chinese Communist Party, is going after these peaceful meditators. We have some amazing questions, but I know, Diana, you have one last thing to say before we move to questions. You've seen a lot of successes, especially talking to people within the CCP state apparatus and even in Xinjiang with Uyghurs. Can you share briefly about those experiences? And then we'll move on to questions. Sorry, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Yes, over the past 13 years, I've spoken with many people in China from all walks of life. I found that when I connect with someone from the heart and that they can feel my kindness, I have a better chance of conveying the truth and reveal its power. Let me give you some examples. I remember one case clearly. I reached out to a local police chief who was directly involved in the persecution and illegal detention of the local Falun Gong practitioners. So I introduced myself as a Falun Gong practitioner living overseas. I told him international human rights organizations had already documented his actions and could be used in future court trials. If that happened, his family members would likely be implicated. I also warned him that if the CCP ever faced a crisis, they would likely throw people like him under the bus to escape blame, just like they did after the Cultural Revolution. At that time, hundreds of lower-level police officers were executed by firing squad to appease the public, and their families were only told that they died in the line of duty. He listened quietly the entire time. In the end, he admitted, I was right. He understood the risk he was taking by following the orders. He said he would help. 3 days later, I heard the practitioner was released. At the start of 2020, just after the COVID outbreak in Wuhan, I joined a core project focusing on the Wuhan local people. I told them the truth about the virus and how the CCP covered up. Many people I reached were party members. One man answered and was very angry. He yelled at me, calling me a traitor and an enemy of the country. I could feel his fear. Wuhan was under city lockdown, and everything was chaotic. I stayed calm and told him the party is not the same as the country. I explained how the CCP uses fear and lies to control people, like hiding the real death numbers, punishing whistleblowers, and stopping people from knowing the truth. I said, when people feel hopeless, that's when the party takes full control of your thoughts, your body, and your soul. He slowly calmed down. He asked me, what can I do? I'm just a regular person with no power. I said, start by thinking for yourself. Refuse the brainwash. Don't help the party do wrong. You can stay true in your heart. By the end, he agreed to quit the Communist Party. He thanked me, and we ended the call peacefully. In another case, about 8 years ago, I called a hospital in Xinjiang, where we believe the organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners was taking place. A young intern answered. I could tell from his accent that he was a Uyghur. I talked to him about the CCP's persecution of Uyghurs, how people were being locked up and their organs were taken. He didn't deny it. I could feel he was listening with his heart. I said, in your job, it's easy to become part of this crime without meaning to. I told him that CCP targets not only Uyghurs, but also Falun Gong practitioners, anyone who wants to keep their faith and not allow the parties and not follow the party blindly. I said, I believe you are a good person. I support you and your people. We are all victims of this regime. By the end, he quit the Communist Young League, which is part of the CCP system. He thanked me for telling him the truth. That's all the 3 examples I gave. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. I think you had a powerful message about, interfaith support and solidarity. Obviously, what you said to that Uyghur hospital intern touched his heart. Same thing with, the party official. It's incredible that, you're able to do this by just staying calm and having that faith that things will be, that they'll understand the message you're trying to convey. We have some incredible questions. The first question is from Augustine from Venezuela. He asks, how do you deal with the fear of persecution from the CCP? And where do you have the inner power of oneself for the determination of fighting against the actions of the CCP? And I think this question, maybe Diana, you can answer this since you recently you just finished talking about making calls. What are the hardships? How do you face that on a day-to-day basis? And how do you deal with fear if there is any? Sorry, you're unmuted again.
So there's definitely consequence when you stand up and against the most powerful authoritarians in the world. I haven't returned to China in over 15 years, ever since I began making phone calls to tell people the truth. The Chinese government confiscated my passport after I tried to renew it. They asked me to list all the activities I involved in the United States that opposed the Chinese government. I refused to cooperate, so they never gave me my passport back. Even my family members were affected. And my friends and relatives in China are now very afraid to contact me. They worry the government will target them too. I understand their fears, so I haven't reached out to them for years. And yes, one challenge is to continue what I'm doing. Why I have that kind of guts to decide to continue. I learned to put myself in other people's shoes, to think from their perspective. I know that in China, the practitioners are in very hardship, and I live in a free country. What can be worse, right? If I don't do anything in a free environment, in a free country, what about the people in China? They will have no hope. So think about, I would feel like that's the reason I feel I have the courage to continue, because I will feel shame if I stop my effort. I become a coward, and just want to have a comfortable life. I could, no threat in my life from CCP, but I cannot find the peace in my heart. And also talking about where I get the patience, the compassion to these people, the Chinese people. Lots of times they treat me badly when I make phone calls, especially at the beginning, the beginning years. Now it's better. When I first started making phone calls, many people hung up, yell at me, or accused me of disturbing their lives. Some even called me a traitor, but I've learned not to take it personally. I understand that they've lived under fear and brainwashing for so long. So I try to improve myself every time. So the next call can be more kind, more thoughtful, and more effective. Honestly, this isn't something an ordinary person could do for long. It takes deep belief in truth, compassion, and forbearance. That's why I'm very grateful to Falun Dafa. It gives me the strength to keep going. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your motivations and what inspires you to keep going. I think I speak for everyone watching this stream or watching it, the recording of it, that it's not easy when you have to be on call. Like, I know a lot of people at call centers for different companies. They have to face that abuse every single day from customers, like the customer service people. And I have so much appreciation, and I have so much hope that, you know, people like you who are able to power through that and actually find courage within yourself to not take it to heart, to put yourself in other people's shoes. I think that's incredibly impressive. And it's easy to say, but very, very difficult to do. And the next question we have is kind of similar. And I would say Jenny could be the best person to answer this one. Monica says, to me, the most difficult moment is to be forced to choose between saving the family and not giving up in front of that unimaginable pressure. How can you deal with this extremely painful situation of family or standing up for your values in activism? Jenny? Thank you, Jenny. She said, I haven't shared this before, but my husband is currently in detention in China as we speak. So this is the hardest part for me, the most difficult part for me in the past 20 plus years. In the past, about 30 Falun Gong practitioners in my area, including my husband, were arrested many times, brainwashed, sentenced, tortured in custody, etc. And my husband was considered the so-called leader. So he was arrested again and again. And in the past, he was detained 10 months and also sentenced to forced labor for 3 years. And the latest was his detention from August 2024, and he's still in detention now, but he hasn't been sentenced. The reason I'm able to persist in activism and even speaking out today is because I know that truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance is not wrong. These principles have benefited me personally and my family so much, but people are being deceived. Chinese people are being deceived by the CCP. And I continue to walk this path on behalf of my husband and also on behalf of these values that I believe are true and good. Thank you so much, Jenny. I'm so sorry to hear about your husband. I know the U.S. government would be interested to start a family rescue campaign for you, and I'm so grateful that you're here speaking out today. The last question that we received in the chat, maybe Larry can answer this. John asked, what can I do to help? Some people asking for the link, and due to time restraints, I want to respect the audience's time as well as the panelists. I understand some of you have full-time jobs to get back to. So as closing, I really want to thank everyone in the audience for your time, your attention, and all of the incredible questions. As we've seen today, grassroots dissent doesn't look like grand gestures. It can mean quietly printing out flyers in your own home like Jenny, making phone calls across borders like Diana, or standing before international bodies to speak for those who can't, like Libing. And if you'd like to stay engaged or learn more about these issues, please visit faluninfo.net and feel free to share the recording of this event. We will have it on our YouTube channel once it's available. And on behalf of the Falun Dafa Information Center, thank you again, and we hope to see you in a future event. Until next time.